For a variety of reasons, some coaches don't have access to as much pool time as they'd otherwise prefer. And so that can present a problem because if you're used to swimming a certain amount over the course of a week, that's what you come to believe is going to be necessary for athletes to continue to improve. So a question I've received recently is that if I'm limited in the number of hours I have access to a pool, or I'm limited in the total volume that I can achieve with the athletes I'm working with, is that necessarily going to compromise their performance? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So over the years, I've tried to learn anything and everything I can from all sorts of different coaches in terms of how they help prepare their swimmers. And so you see some coaches that do a whole ton of volume, and then you see some coaches that do very, very little volume. And so the conclusion I've kind of come to is that there are a lot of different ways to be really successful. However, there are certain things you have to do and certain things you have to be good at if you're going to take certain approaches. For instance, if you're going to have a program where athletes are consistently swimming 70,000 meters a week or something like that, there's certain things that you're going to have to be good at, and there's certain things that you're going to have to manage in order to make that work successfully. And if you don't do those things, then you're not going to be successful with that program. Likewise, if you have a very limited amount of time, or you choose to limit the amount of swimming that athletes do, there are going to be certain things you need to do in order to be successful. And so specifically to the question that was asked, what are some important aspects of a plan or a program when the volume is going to be relatively low? Something like 6 practices a week, swimming 4,000 to 5,000 meters a practice. While there are certainly programs that would go even lower than that, that's pretty low relative to what other programs are doing and having success with. And so my answer to that question is that if you're going to do something like that, or you're forced to do something like that, you have to be really good in other areas because you can't make up for any mistakes, or you can't use training volume to drive the program and drive the process of improvement. So there are 2 things that are really important to get done if you're going to have success with that type of program. So the first is that athletes need to be consistently and regularly swimming fast. And so the quality of everything you do, it needs to be really high. And quality doesn't just necessarily mean really fast. Aerobic work can have a really high quality to it as well. And what that means is that relative to the expectations of what you want to see, athletes need to be matching those or hitting those and doing so regularly. You can't afford to have bad sets. And so athletes need to be set up for success because they need to be swimming really well considering the relative lack of volume. Another way of putting it is that just completing the workouts isn't going to be enough to drive change. They have to be completed really well. And so while some of that is certainly on the athletes, it's up to the coach as well to make sure that they're setting athletes up for success in practice and allowing them the opportunity to do things at a really high level. And that's regardless of what type of work it is, whether it's kick work, whether it's aerobic work, whether it's sprinting, whether it's pace work. It doesn't necessarily matter. It needs to be done really well. And a big part of that is how coaches are setting athletes up for success. So that's the first big piece. If that's not there, if practices aren't done particularly well, it's going to be really difficult to have success with that type of program. And the other aspect of setting athletes up for success is coaches need to have high standards and expectations of what they want to see, and they need to make sure that those are being reinforced. And so they set athletes up for success, and then they provide them with the structure and the feedback and the encouragement to ensure that they hit those standards and expectations. And if they don't, changes need to be made, and that needs to be reinforced. So the quality aspect of the program in terms of how well things are done is going to be critical. The other thing that I believe is really important for success in a lower volume program is that there has to be a focus on skill development, and that has to be an integrated part of what you're doing. And so again, you can't use volume and some of the training adaptations that come with volume to drive performance. So you're going to have to use skill development in order to drive performance. And so when done really well, it doesn't require as much volume. So it's an objective that can be achieved in lower volume programs. However, it's not just about doing drills. Skill development and ensuring that skill development happens across all training components is going to be really important. And so you have to identify the key skills that you want athletes to display in races, and then those skills need to be practiced throughout an entire practice, regardless of the situation. So it's not just running a skill development program where you do a couple of drills in the beginning and then just training the rest of the time. They need to be integrated into the training process. And if you can do that, if things are done at a really high quality and there's great skill development throughout, you can be really successful, with a lot less volume than would otherwise be considered to be required. So you can take different approaches to be successful. However, if you reduce emphasis in one area, there needs to be a corresponding increase in another area. And so when the volume is being lowered, there needs to be more of an emphasis on skill development and really high quality swimming in order to be successful. So hopefully, if you are running a lower volume program, that provides a little bit of guidance in terms of how to maximize the results that you're trying to get when you do that type of program. If you just do less of the same thing, you're probably not going to see the results you want. You need to make sure that kids are swimming really, really well, and there's a specific focus on technical development and skill development both throughout an entire practice, and there's a progressive plan throughout an entire year. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have any other questions, definitely let me know.